people in the waiting room waiting to see our exciting. Welcome to the EED voting session. We have 3 bills today. Is that right, Ms. Lambert?
Yes.
All right. What's the first
You
bill?
want me to go through the bills?
Sure.
First bill is House Bill 511. This bill has one amendment, which I just sent you. We had to exempt the funding provided to the School for Public Policy from the funding formulas, which is what we did in House Bill 1 last year when we created separate funding. It's a technical thing. Otherwise, this money is included in the formulas and flows down to community colleges and NICU institutions. So there's one amendment if you want to move the amendment.
All right, yeah, let's move the amendment. It should actually reduce the fiscal impact. So I'll move the amendment.
Second.
All right, all in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, raise your hand. Okay. On the bill as amended, is there any discussion?
Yeah, if we could we just summarize what this bill does again? It creates a new program that's run through the University of Maryland. And it's a public policy program. And this money flows back to the community colleges. Is that, I'm still confused about what this program does and why it's necessary.
You actually accurately described it until you float it back through the community college. It's just a public policy institute at the University of Maryland. And
so how do the community colleges benefit from it?
So the way the funding formulas work is that any state funding to the public institutions, that's how you calculate the funding to community colleges. That's like the X in the equation. So because you're adding 1.5 million to a public institution, that creates a larger X number. The amendment that was just moved exempts this addition from that amount, so the money, there would be no increase to community colleges. It's a similar thing that was done when you passed the HBCU bill last year, because you included new grants to HBCUs and we didn't want that money to then change the funding formula for community colleges.
We just decoupled the formula. This doesn't have anything to do with community colleges.
Gotcha. All right, very good.
It's just a public policy institute. Page 2, it's one page just describing in the institute support students to access public leadership careers through partnerships, skill development, professional mentorship. Sure, by the time this program runs its life, somebody from every one of our districts will end up in this institute. It's just to support students who want careers in public service. Any other discussion?
Come work in the state government.
That's right. Take our jobs.
Oh my God, everyone's saying exactly what I'm thinking, so I don't have to say it.
All right, any other discussion?
Move.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, raise your hand. Reed Novotny is in the negative. We have you.
Thank you.
That bill passes 5-1. Next bill.
Next bill is House Bill 734. Delegate Solomon, do you want me to describe it or do you want to describe it? I'm happy to.
I can take a shot at it, and then you can fill in anything that I've missed. It'll be good practice. And I have to say, Michelle has done absolute yeoman's work on this. So appreciate everything that she put into this. So this is sort of the big student financial aid bill that we're working on. So there's a couple of pieces to it. I'll sort of go through. So if you go through the reprint, we added a couple of pieces in here from the original intent of the bill, which was to expand the EA program, address the GA cliff, and a couple of small other things. So the first thing we did was we added, there's a near completer grant program that MHEC funds for MHEC to do outreach to students who dropped out but are near completing. What we did is add in a provision that said MHEC's got to focus on that group of students that did not attend college this year. So if you all remember from the budget hearing, there's about 5,200 kids who, by their estimation, graduated and ordinarily would have enrolled in college, but didn't because of COVID or other circumstances over the last year. So this would require MHEC to figure out how to target outreach to those students to try to get them back in to higher ed. So we just added a requirement into the existing program. Continuing at the bottom of page 2, that $500,000 increase is for Michelle, remind me exactly what that's for. I'm sorry.
This is the college access program. So because we're going to be asking, because you're making a lot of changes to financial aid generally, this would increase, just double the amount they get because they're going to be seeing more students. We already fund them at $200,000, so almost double.
That's right. Thank you. And then if you continue down on page 3, and this is on the document that Michelle sent out this morning, this is the change to the GA grant cliff. So you may remember we have an income cutoff for the renewal of the GA grant, which is sort of our big, it should cover basically the cost of attending a public college in Maryland. So the income cutoff to enroll in the program is 130% of poverty, and then to re-enroll in the program, it's 150%. And so there's a group of students, give or take, every year who their income goes, even if it's $1 over, they lose the entire program. And so we've had students who literally go from getting, $19,000 a year to afford college to now suddenly getting $3,000. So it's a pretty dramatic cliff, causes a lot of financial hardship. So what we've done here is basically said that if you remain eligible for Pell, which is a federal program, the federal government sort of big assist to low-income college students, you remain in the program, you remain eligible for GA. So it takes away the disincentive, essentially takes away the disincentive for students not to work, and doesn't penalize parents for for an increase in income. And we think this should save probably about 200 students, give or take, from falling off that cliff. And most importantly, this was the recommendation that MHEC put forward. The Financial Aid Assistance Council considered a couple of different options, and this was ultimately the option that they settled on. So we're basically just codifying the decision that MHEC has already been working through.
A recommendation of the administration, is that right?
Correct, Mr. Chair.
Got it.
All right, so continuing down on page 4. So we know that there were some changes that needed to be made to the Next Generation Scholars Program. This inserts that those programs may continue to provide services to students once they get to college. Obviously, we know the supports that a lot of first-generation students need don't just end when they enroll. If anything, it's almost more important to continue with them so they can be successful and actually graduate. So that's just a minor tweak to the program. Continuing down on it's page 5 of the reprint, but page 6 of the overall PDF. So we struck the language that would have increased the EA grant to $7,000. And so the reasoning behind that, and we'll see when we get down to the last couple of pages, we'll see the appropriation increase. So we went back and forth on this. The original bill increased the max award for an EA grant, which is the sort of next step down from the GA grant. So the GA covers almost all the costs. The EA grant is also for low-income students who aren't quite as needy, and it's meant to cover 40 to 60%, depending on the school you go to in Maryland. That hasn't increased, but it has a pretty substantial wait list of about 10,000 students. And so we went back and forth, and if we had increased the overall size of the grant, basically we would have just been giving the money to students who are already getting it, and we wouldn't have done anything to knock down the size of the wait list. So we made the decision that it was more important for us to give at least some amount of aid to more students to get them in the door, help them get over that little, what might be the little hump they need to afford school. And this additional appropriation would almost completely eliminate the wait list. So that was a decision we made. So you'll see that's why this language was struck. But we did increase the overall appropriation to the program, which will allow us to, again, eliminate the wait list. And then continuing on here, this is just some more language around the GA cliff piece on page 7, and then you can see that we struck the $75 million, and the new mandated appropriation is 112, and that goes to the overall sort of EA-GA pot under the Howard Rawlings scholarship program. And then continuing down, so the language in 18601 at the bottom of page 7 is actually language from Delegate McKay's bill. To add a private career school eligibility into the Conroy program. So again, this bill's got sort of a lot of smaller tweaks in the financial aid system. It's just cleaner to do it in one bill. So that is in here. We also increased the overall appropriation to that program. We doubled it from 2 million to 4 million to make sure that students and families in that program in particular, which obviously are really tough situations based on, kids of fallen first responders will have more access to financial aid. So we wanted to make sure that we had that funding in there. And then continuing down on the bottom of page 9, we added in stepson or stepdaughter to the program. And you can see here That was Delegate Pippi's bill. Again, it was cleaner to put all this sort of in one big package that could just be implemented at the same time. So this is verbatim from Delegate Pippi's bill around stepson and stepdaughter. And then we added funding into the Proctor Scholarship for HBCU students. So I know that was a lot. Any questions? And I'm sure Michelle knows way more than I do about this.
Any questions on the amendments? How many amendments are there?
2.
2. That was a lot of words for 2 amendments, Delegate. Did a great job.
I like to be thorough, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Would move the amendment, motion move the amendments?
All right, motion to move the amendments. Is it okay we take both amendments together, or does anybody want to piece them out? Okay.
Second.
All right, all in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. All right, the amendments are adopted. Do we have discussion on the bill? This is a big bill. This is a huge financial aid bill for us, to get money to, working class kids, to make sure that they don't fall off this cliff, to make sure they can go to college and get an education. Also for our first responders, fallen first responders. So I think it's a big deal for this committee. Any discussion on this bill? All right. Is there a motion?
Move the bill?
Move the bill. Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Raise your hand. Great, unanimous. Thank you, committee.
Thank you.
Last bill. Thank you, Delegate. Great job.
House Bill 1030 is Delegate Smith's bill. This bill made changes to the award date for the Rawlings Scholarship. There are a couple amendments. The first amendment's on the first page. It allows the comptroller to share tax information with the Maryland Higher Education Commission, similarly how other agencies have that authority. It was pointed out that it would be hard for MHEC to meet the April 14th deadline change in the bill, and the sponsor worked with everybody to figure out that maybe if the comptroller was able to share more information, that would help them meet that deadline. So that's why that's added. Next change is on page 3, which requires by July 1st, 2025 for the commission to design a scholarship application that acts kind of like a common application for all the scholarships that MHEC administers. Instead of having individuals or students apply to every single scholarship separately, the sponsor would like the commission to create one platform so that you could say what things you may qualify for at once and not have an unnecessary burden. And then the last change is on the last page that requires, there's 2 changes, sorry. It requires the commission to update the regulations for the Promise Scholarship by August of this year, corresponding to the date changes that the bill makes. We want the commission to figure out what the appropriate date is, but we do want them to update the Promise Scholarship based on the date changes in the bill. And the last is in section 3, that it's the intent of the General Assembly that the next says legislative session, but I believe it's supposed to be next fiscal year, that the Higher Education Commission should establish an independent Office of Financial Assistance as a separate independent agency. And those are all the amendments.
All right, are there any questions on the amendments?
The Promise Scholarship Amendment. Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair.
You just muted yourself. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. The Promise Scholarship Amendment, you're letting them set a date and hopefully it will be earlier for notification. Was that the motivation?
Yeah, the community colleges, they didn't set a date themselves in the amendment they offered. They wanted as soon as practicable. And that is the language we put in uncodified. We're actually making it so that MHEC has to update their regulations with that as soon as practicable language before August 1st this year.
Thank you. I really appreciate that amendment.
All right, do we need to, I think we can take these amendments together as well. I'll move the amendments.
Second.
All in favor of the amendments, say aye.
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 All right, any opposed, raise your hand. The amendments pass. Any other discussion on the bill? It's a great year for us in financial aid here in the committee. And Delegate Smith, great bill. So I will move favorable on the bill.
Second.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, raise your hand. Two great financial aid bills in committee. We are going to look at doing some more work around this, maybe in budget language or otherwise, to really dig into MHEC and see if they're doing, they're the proper place for financial aid or a separate agency, and get to the bottom of making sure that we have a well-run, well-regulated financial aid system, because I know it's a priority for everybody on this subcommittee. So stay tuned for that. We'll be working more on that as session moves forward and the budget moves. With that, I think we have done all of our bills. So thank you. See you soon.